You know, would be that enough?
You guys sit next to each other when I call your names.
We're just keeping it on your toes.
No, it's. I didn't choose to see it today, so.
I think it's just the way they. Yeah. It's like a water.
Oh, yes. You can mine.
This year in October 18th was the last day. I read an article somewhere.
We looked
I don't
at
know.
assessment calendar.
When?
What was done.
Is okay.
No, I haven't started.
Okay.
Actually,
We got a couple of two positions where spearfishing right now. Had a couple of conversations today. Trying to get site set up. After that, I'm gonna set up little cell accounts and then we're gonna look at the Thursday morning to create that on the desk. So we're actually meeting with Chelsea and Amanda on Thursday. Yeah. So we're actually look for oh, good. We're trying to be creative and ask people. About stories there, that's what I'm saying.
All right, I'll call this meeting to order at 6:05, September 13th. Regular business meeting for the Friends School District. If you Actually, let's do the roll call first. Do we have Richard on the owl? Richard, are you there? Ricardo?
Yeah.
Crystal?
Here.
Christy?
Here.
Heidi?
Hi, here.
Chair's here. We have a quorum. If you guys all join me for flag salute and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. First item up is approval of the agenda. I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we add an agenda item of homecoming update.
A motion and a second. We don't normally adjust the agenda. What are you looking for in terms of information?
The background on the cancellation and the plan for the future
And if
on it.
staff isn't ready to make,
Well, they were ready to make the announcement to students.
that's not the way that I understand it.
Well, it'll be good to hear.
So. All right, let's do a vote. All those in favor, let's start with Ricardo.
Aye.
Crystal,
Aye.
Christy,
Aye.
Heidi,
Aye.
chair votes nay, motion carries. So we will adjust that. One other note of comment, we'll probably move the board retreat set date. This is non-binding to most of the other business to the end. We can chat about it a little bit.
Can I pause you just for 1 second?
Sure, go ahead.
I didn't get your vote.
Mine?
You voted for?
Yes.
Heidi?
Sorry, it was.
That's
poorly
okay.
worded.
Thank you.
Sure. At this time, we'll do public comments. And we have one that was submitted in writing and then several who would like to get up and speak. Let me read just a brief statement about that. We're about to enter the public comment section. Time allotted is to 2 minutes per person. We will max it out at 10 minutes, but that's probably not gonna be a problem based on the number of people we are having. Following our public comment policy, BDDH, I'm asked to remind you that these procedures, which are designed to help you effectively participate in board meetings for the best interest of the individual, the district, and the patrons. Statements should be brief and concise. Questions asked by the public may be referred to the superintendent for response later if an investigation into the answer is required. Speakers may offer objective criticism of district operations and programs. The board will not hear comments regarding individual staff members. Visit the website or contact Diane Watch for more information. I want to thank you for participating today and hope you will return in the future. So with that, the one written comment I have was from Marissa. Did you want to come up and talk to that?
I do, yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, come on forward. You don't really have a spot for, I guess, except that table, will that work?
Hi, everybody, Marisa Heron. This was kind of thrown together because it was last minute, so it's not my best. It has come to the parents' attention that the homecoming dance has been canceled due to an announcement made by the governor. I'm only assuming that this is something that was said by Director Gill. I watched that press conference and I don't see anything that suggests not having this extracurricular activity. With correct protocols, we can move forward with this event as well as future events. There are currently concerts happening and full stadiums for college football games. There's no reason these kids who attend school and are around each other all day can't attend a dance. Why isn't this a board decision instead of the decision of a single person? If that single person is no longer willing to do their job that requires extracurricular activities, why isn't someone else in charge? I believe this should be a decision of a type of board that is made up of students, teachers, and parents. We need these events to take place like we were told would happen. Why are promises being made and then broken? High schoolers have been planning this event. They have made appointments, spent money because they were told this event would happen. Last year, the parents planned all the events with 0 outbreaks. Please get the dance back up and going to help our kids have a normal high school year. They not only look forward to attending school, but all of the activities that are associated with school. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Megan.
My name is Megan Patzer. I'm here as a parent. I am a former teacher and have my master's degree in assessment-driven education. So I'm data collection. I want to thank all of you for doing what you do, because I know it takes time from your families, and I appreciate the time you put into our community. I really do. So it's my understanding that that the ODE put in place that the first week of school is going to be about building care and connection for students and faculty. In fact, there's a large guideline on the ODE website that I don't think that I need to waste my time reading, but I do know too that our staff members wore connection t-shirts the first week of school. It was very important that they made connections. In the last 4 days of, or the first 4 days of school, I've done some data collection. On the first day of school, there was a volleyball game. The national anthem was playing, so I stopped and listened with my hand over my heart. A staff member never stood for this and never acknowledged the flag. Then as I entered the gym, I heard the staff member turn to a student in a tone that I didn't know the staff member even had, and said, "Get your mask over your nose." That was the first day of school with care and connection. The second day of school, I received a call from a new parent at the high school asking about administrative policies. She discussed an incident with her student as well as a few others that were pulled into the office and spoken to by 3 administrators about properly wearing masks. They would hate for that to affect their football playing time. That's the second day of a freshman in the high school. Didn't get through 2 full days of school. Care and connection. Third day of school, my son came home from the middle school and told me that masks were now required at recess, that they could not go outside and play without wearing a mask. But when you see your parents outside, you can take your masks off and go at the end of the day. No policy change was sent to the parents, no notification of this policy change. Care and connection, kind of not. Over the weekend, rumors flew about a teacher canceling homecoming dance because he was the activity advisor and he was not going to plan a dance, so kiss your dance goodbye. Teachers were not really truly caring about how the kids felt. On the 4th day of school today, I got a text home from my high school student that in fact the dance was canceled. Today, after 4 days total of school, we ask ourselves, how are we doing caring and connecting with students? I don't know, but I can tell you that there are 3 children in my house that do not feel like the staff at 2 schools are quite concerned about how they feel about coming to school. If you don't care about students, I'm not really sure why you're in education. That's why I went into education, because I adore kids and I want to advocate for them. And that's why I'm here today. We have no choice but to think about what kids care about. That is the business we're in. I drove up to the school district office today to turn my paperwork in to speak tonight, and recess was going on at the middle school. Boys were running up and down the basketball court. It was 70 degrees outside and they were wearing masks. I don't think their oxygen flow was as good as it could be on an outdoor sunny day. Not very healthy. If we collect data and we use data to drive our instruction, we need to collect and assess ourselves as educators. I don't know that that's happening. I don't know that when a freshman comes to school on the second day and gets called into an administrative office, if they really feel cared about. And if those administrators are taking the time to assess themselves and how that's being put towards kids. On page 5 of frequently asked questions on the ODE website, the question says, what are the consequences to a student not wearing a mask inside of school? The response is this: when students falter in consistently and correctly wearing a face mask or face covering, center grace and patience and reteach the expectation. Refrain from implementing consequences that deny access to instruction. They were pulled out of academic classes to have this conversation. As a result of these challenges, schools and teams should continuously provide instruction and positive reinforcement to help all students adapt to the changes in school facilities while ensuring punitive measures are not the methodology to remind, motivate, and reinforce healthy practices. In case that a student or a family chooses not to wear a face covering for reasons other than medical needs, schools should follow district processes to determine how to respond, keeping in mind both the responsibility and health of students as well as their care and need for education. I think it's time that we assess and how we're advocating for our kids. It seemed a little bit like a bait and switch. Get them into school and then we're going to change the rules about recess. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa Vaughn, did you have comments you want to make? Nope, okay. And then Jim Bankhead?
There's one more comment to read on the back page.
Hi, I'm Jim Bankhead. I'm a mother of 3 boys, a freshman, a 7th grader, and a 4th grader. A freshman that you just heard a story about, which I spoke with his principal today and expressed my concerns of the overreach, where he has not been, unless you want to count hybrid, which was not very much, it was 2 days a week of person face-to-face with his teacher in a classroom setting, being a normal kid. He was pulled out of that on the second day of school. And I thought he was only in the room with 2 administrators. No, she informed me today he was in the room with 3 administrators, which, as you can all probably guess, is very, very terrifying and intimidating. And he is a kid. Yes, he can be naughty, he can be ornery, but overall, he's a good kid. And for him, that was uncomfortable. It was not okay. It went against what Megan just read about not taking, it should not interfere with his education time. And that did interfere. For however long that conversation was, that interfered with his education time, which that's why I send my kids to school. I don't send them to school to be mask policed. And I get it's annoying to have to remind them 30 times a day, hey, can you pull your mask up? Hey, can you pull your mask up? Sure, maybe he was reminded by every single one of his teachers 2 times a day, but you know what? Remind them 1 more time. You don't have to pull them out of class to tell them and stick them in the principal's office. Going to the principal's office is, to me, you got into a fight. You brought drugs to school. You're bullying someone, which he has already been on the receiving end from a certain demographic of students who calls my son a homophobic, racist boot wearer because he has a mullet and he wears boots. And that's how he chooses to express himself. Oh, and because he wears American flags. But none of that is being touched. I can guarantee teachers, faculty are hearing those comments, not saying anything. My 7th grader has also been on the receiving end of that. He's been on the receiving end where he was called a Trumpy, a 12-year-old who cannot vote by another child because so much divide has been created. And our schools are more concerned about the fact that they had to tell a student to pull their mask up more than twice. Another thing I wanted to know is, why is the homecoming dance canceled? Because one teacher decided. That teacher has medical credentials, has any credentials to show that they have the right or they have the knowledge to be able to make an informed decision to cancel homecoming dance. My son's first homecoming dance, his first big high school experience he was looking forward to, outside of playing football for high school. Kids don't only need education, they also need social and emotional outlets. They have kids that are coming from awful homes, tragedy homes, trauma-filled homes. And these moments, those little, a 2-hour dance or however long it is a little snippet where they get to just be a kid and forget about what's going on at home, to escape the abuse that's going on at home, the neglect that's going on at home. And they get to be with their friends, and they get to be normal kids, they get to socialize, and they get to smile and take funny pictures and dance their butts off. And for a few hours, forget about everything that's going on in the world. So as a parent, I just ask you to please maybe talk with this teacher, and most of all, just maybe make the decision for our kids to not take one more thing away from them that's already been taken. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one overlooked. Pamela, did you want to talk?
Well, I can just say goodbye. So thanks again for giving the opportunity to come here in person and be able to address this. I too am here about the homecoming dance. Kind of set the day off in a little bit of a tailspin. So like how you guys all don't want to be surprised, I don't like being surprised by this either. And to think that this is based off of a statement made by the governor on September 7th, yet on September 13th is the first that we're hearing anything about this from our kids saying that it's canceled. Little disheartening. So I can imagine that the overwhelming feelings that I'm having, the anxieties, the frustrations, the sadness, everything that comes that every day that we seem to be in this world right now, I can only imagine what the kids are taking in from all of this, because they're hearing this from all the people above them. So it's just really frustrating. I sat at a community forum meeting not even a month ago where Ginger talked to us about coming back to school. She was excited to be back in person. We understood that the mask mandate was going to happen regardless of how we felt about it. But she was excited. Her comments to us when she was asked specifically by a staff member and by a student that if May Day was going to happen or if the homecoming dance was going to happen, Ginger's response was, yes, this is going to happen. Even if we have to think outside the box, we were going to make this happen for our kids because we want them to have a normal year. That was my takeaway from that meeting. And then to come this morning to receive a message from my daughter saying that a teacher has told them that homecoming is canceled for the dance. It's really frustrating. Of course, following the science is just impossible these days, but I will state that, last weekend, the Sublimity Harvest Festival happened outside for 4 days. This next weekend, Oktoberfest is happening in Mount Angel. Pendleton Roundup is happening, which the governor has said that that's her favorite thing to go to. So, so she's, got that on her agenda, I'm sure. So to see these big events happening, and not being able for us to be able to have these kids out and interacting with the people they interact with daily, it's again, frustrating. I was trying to look up some statistics on this because I'm trying to get my head around it. And the only thing I could find on the OHA website regarding pediatrics is they have their dashboard. And so it says hospitalization of pediatric COVID cases during their illness remains rare. In Oregon, for the week of August 29th, ages 12 to 17, there were 4 hospitalizations out of 297,706 kids. There's been no new data since that. So how are we basing our decisions? Thank you.
Thank you. That's the last one I have here. Thank you guys for coming and providing public comment. It is much appreciated. And as you all know, these times are interesting. I'll leave it at that.
Sorry, I forgot to go for the meeting.
Moving on to item number 2, board communication. Obviously, there's been lots of updates on various things. I don't have a lot to add to that at this point.
Glenn, can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
About it, I was looking at the face coverings in Oregon Department of Education, the update from September 9th, which is their most current one. I don't see where they've updated that we are wearing masks during recess. So if we can have a follow-up on that.
Sure. We're gonna move Border Street down. One, has Richard joined us online? I just want to leave him off if he's. It doesn't sound like it, okay. So moving on to item number 3, superintendent's report for the order.
With the order that I give the principals a chance to share how opening has gone so far. So, Corey, want to come up and do?
Yeah. Thank you. So elementary will go first. We've got the earliest bedtime.
I don't know about that.
Great start in our classrooms with our youngest learners, 1st and 2nd grade, and 3rd, 4th, and 5th last week. And then today, half of our kindergartners and all of our preschoolers. So lots of joy in the eyes and just happiness to be together again. Both myself and Principal Hunt have been in classrooms last Friday and been most all day today, doing some read alouds and connecting with kids and having them connect with each other. Really, the work of the teachers the last few days has been just wonderful to see. And it's been great to see the relationships that they're starting to form with their friends, and it just seems like they're just really happy to be together again. And I don't know, I couldn't be more pleased with how the week's starting for our younger kids. It's been great. And maybe a couple of the best comments were on Friday, can we come back next week? That's great. And kids asking about just all the things that they're curious about in the classroom. What are the art projects we're gonna be working on, and are we going to get to watch any movies this year, and what are we going to be learning today, and that type of thing. And I did hear a student, they must have been doing some research, because I look at Bill because we've talked about the first female that summited Mount Everest, who's a Woodburn hometown person. And so I think they've been doing some research on Mount Everest. That was great to hear from a 4th grader saying, did you know that the first woman to summit Mount Everest is from Woodburn, Oregon? That's just down the road. That's awesome. I don't know if you have any questions about our elementary startup. I'd be happy to answer those, or if I don't know, find out for you.
I do have one quick question, just to circle back around. How many on average mask breaks are they taking per day?
Probably depends on the kiddo, really.
Okay.
Some kids, they don't think twice about it, and but other kids need a little break, and sometimes that's just have to seat for a little bit. Sometimes it's over by the sink to get a drink, or certainly, everybody's really well hydrated this year.
Okay.
And then at lunch and at the recesses and things like that, for sure. So.
Okay, so they're not wearing masks at recess in the 2 buildings?
Not at recess.
Okay. I appreciate it. I have actually heard from a couple of little kids, and they are very happy.
Good. Yeah, that's what we want. Happy kids and parents and teachers.
Thank you so much.
So, okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to jump back to about 2 weeks ago when our staff came back in. It was pretty fantastic to see people in person, to not see the Brady Bunch boxes on the screen anymore. And those folks came in with more enthusiasm and excitement than we could relay to you in words. We were ecstatic about the energy that the staff brought. That energy never stopped. When students came last week, there were some hiccups. There was a little bit of, how do we do this thing called school again? From systemic to just memory kind of things. But what I love about the students and the staff right now is this this sense of grace and flexibility all around. And again, the enthusiasm, the excitement override everything. You know, we did start with the focus on care and connection. And so there's a lot of questions. You know, you come back to a student handbook, and the student handbook might say things like, hey, no hats, no hoods, you know, no phones kind of thing. Our staff have been having progressive conversations with students. They've been very forgiving for things because the overriding consent there is we want students here. We want them feeling welcomed. We want them feeling safe. And so the energy in the building has been palpable. We have had so many opportunities for, especially during our homeroom, we've been running an AM assembly schedule, and we created this notion of homeroom in our movement to create more opportunities for inclusion and for connection. And homeroom is an opportunity to have every student connect to an adult, and for that adult to connect to those students and say, these are my kids, I am their advocate, and they will not falter on my watch. And so we set up an AM assembly schedule where students had a longer hour-long period to meet with that homeroom teacher for the last 5 days, basically. And there were some logistical pieces there. We could push out technology, you know, kind of get kids set up with their big binders and their organizational systems. But really, it was another focus on care and connection kind of opportunity. We've had some great opportunities for games, getting to know you. So we're just very, very excited about the energy that's been there in the building. And then I'll leave with this. There's been that culture of care that we identified the middle school as establishing really predictable routines and rituals. And so every teacher starting every day with some learning objectives and kind of getting through, you know, here's what we're going to do today. And the kids are settling down into rhythm. And I think that's one of the essential components that's been missing for so long. You know, as students, when they were online, they showed up either as an avatar or they didn't show up at all, or they were an avatar that wasn't there. And so in this current reality, what more can I say than kids are in the building? And that's the most incredible thing for us. So, you know, I am representing myself and Ms. Bodinger and our entire staff here, and we're just excited for what is going on and for the foreseeable future. Now, like Corey said, I'm happy to answer any questions. It sounds like there's probably some questions for us.
I'll just ask you the same question.
Yep.
Are you guys requiring masks at recess?
We are. The new guidance that came out on the 9th of last week, there were three major parts to that. The part that you're alluding to, I believe, is on page 8. On page 8, there's the green italicized language that says, when outside, masks are not required unless there's a distance of 6 feet or more. So perhaps the middle school rushed into compliance, but when we got the guidance Friday, because it says it in a couple places there, even outside, we hear the spectrum of concerns from people. We hear from parents that say, this is extremism, this is control. We hear from parents that say, you're not doing enough to keep my child safe. I'm not sure I want them there. So we're trying to do our best to interpret the data as fast as we can, you know, the guidance, and to implement safety practices. So when we got that Friday morning, we sat down and looked at that, and we read that language and we thought, okay, well, this is going to be a tough lift, but we want to make sure we're compliant. So what we let kids know is that when you're outside, masks are required now, unless you have 6 feet of distance. If you have that 6 feet of distance, feel free, take it off. Take that break if you need to.
So you're really giving that secondary component piece. I just want to make sure I understand you correctly, and for people online.
Yeah.
That if a child is farther than 6 feet from other children, they have the ability to take off the mask.
And the way we teach that, we say, listen, stick your arm out. The other person stick their arm out. That's probably about 6 feet. If you're about that far away from each other, then you're within the guidance for us.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I can tell you that I did notice personally the Care and Connection effort being made on several different levels. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Mark Sundquist, athletic director, assistant principal. Just a few things athletically. First of all, it's great to meet all the coaches. We had a little bit of hiring to do, which went great, but the best thing is I think kids are out enjoying themselves and doing what they should be doing in the fall. Playing soccer, playing volleyball, playing football. I know I met some of you were there last Friday. Nice little atmosphere. It's kind of nice to get back and enjoy that and see the competitiveness that's going on. As of right now, we have about 130 kids, my last count, 130 student athletes. So people involved in any of those fall sports. Personally, I'd like that number to go up. I think for a lot of reasons they're maybe hesitant or just not sure, but soccer numbers continue to go up, which is good. Volleyball's at almost their all-time high. I think it's 30, which is great. So we have 3 teams there. We do have full JV boys soccer and try and get full JV girls and then both varsities. That's football. Out of these next few, the whole next month, out of the 18 days left in the month, including the weekends, there are only 4 days where we don't have an activity, which is great. So kids are really involved in doing what they should be doing. Obviously given the guidance as well. So I think they're doing a really good job. Yeah.
Are student athletes outside required to wear masks?
If they can, it's the same thing. If they can be 6 feet apart, they do not have to wear masks. Or if they are competing, if they are on the field competing, on the volleyball court competing, they do not have to have a mask on.
But if they're playing basketball at recess, they do.
If they can stay, well, in high school, no one's playing basketball during lunch. Is that what you mean?
Or I guess I would refer to middle school at that point.
Oh, okay.
Like, yeah, I mean, during PE, if they're competing on the court being active, do they have to wear masks?
As long as, yes, they do. Yes.
During PE.
During PE outside. What?
No, not during PE outside. It's all 6 feet. You have to be 6 feet.
So PE indoors, yes or no?
Yes.
PE indoor.
Indoor, yes.
The no mask rule only applies to competitive sports.
And
And
that's
so, and actually specifically applies to extracurricular activities. With PE is not, so PE comes under a slightly different piece of guidance.
This is for OHA, correct?
because
Or OHA.
Is this an update? No, PE was not included.
Because very specific activities in PE, like swimming or something else that was restricted, but the rule has remained the same on that.
I'll look it up again, but
correct.
the PE, when we originally had that 2 weeks ago, no, not all PE was included.
No, it was
If they're
very
being
specific.
competitive.
Is that correct? My understanding?
Yeah,
correct?
because competitive has been defined as, teams that are playing in leagues and the term extracurricular is being applied to that. So it might apply to youth sports where they have teams, regular practices and leagues and those types of things.
Right,
Direct fitness basketball or PE basketball.
but the PE portions that were exempt from masking originally were specifically danger of entanglement or other like swimming or gymnastics, correct?
Right.
That is original,
Right.
those are the original words that were in that document. I don't know if it exists anymore, but
That's right, I'll look for it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Me? Sorry, we did some work on that today because we were trying to clarify some of those types of things for ourselves as well. And some folks that were working out before school and trying to sort some of those types of things out. So we did some homework on that today. On Bill Rhodes.
sorry, before we move on from that subject, can I ask if your work around that is going to be communicative somehow? Because there's a lot of confusion, as you can just tell by the last several minutes, right?
I was kind of laughing when Corey talked about Stacy Allison, because as we were getting started with the school this year, I was talking about Stacy. She was a colleague of mine, and was the first woman that climbed Mount Everest, but she is also on my Hood to Coast team. And the story I tell about working with her is that we were in the van one time and we're getting ready to run this hill. And this person who's going to run this hill starts talking about how I'm going to kill this hill, I'm going to knock it down, I'm going to run it to its knees, I'm going to bury it. And Stacy's kind of sitting back in the back of the van, and she kind of goes, I've always found it's a little better to work with the mountain. And in essence, I'm sharing that to say, we definitely have a mountain, what I mean, that we're trying to work with right now. And, almost every day we're trying to find the right hold and the right footing and the right place to go, just to keep from falling off the cliff. And in essence, share that as, as the intro. We are working on, on that, because we do need to communicate that with a variety of audiences. So we will communicate that and communicate that clearly, and about which, kind of where to reference the language that helps to support that, because we're still working through that ourselves. I was with ODE this afternoon in some office hours, and there's still lots of confusion, about the aspects of that in the field across the state. So apologize for confusion, but do know that we are working as hard as we can to get clarity on that, so that we can communicate clearly on that. I do have a presentation, and I think you've got it in your materials. I did want to share.
So I just do want to call to event really quick, that here under the ORS 333-019-1025, it says they are practicing or playing a competitive sport at any level. It doesn't say that it has to be not in PE.
Yeah, I'll share it with you. I
That's fine.
actually went through the FAQs on that, and later on it defines what a competitive sport is, and it gives a description of what that is, and PE doesn't fit in that description. And I'm happy you guys, if you want to work with Ginger on, what I mean, reinterpret some of those things or something like that.
I absolutely need to see that document.
So like I said, we spent considerable time on that today. I'm laughing again because I want to spend just a little time at some point to talk a little bit about teaching and learning and some of the things that we're thinking about to create the context for the work that we're doing around teaching and learning. And know that we have been consumed. This is a mountain. This is my 43rd year in education, and most of you are aware of the experiences that I've had. I've never had an experience like this. This is the hardest work that schools have ever had to do, and the educators have ever had to be involved in, and the kids have ever had to experience, in their lives. I've got a daughter who's a senior in high school this year. So you can imagine how, we're all feeling about the experiences of a senior in high school. So I absolutely empathize with what parents and families and boards and administrators are going through, relative to how their kids have experienced school over the course of the last few years. Care and connection has been at the core of how we try to prepare ourselves for these unprecedented results. As you know, at the high school, we have a much different arrangement for students in terms of, where they attend classes, how they get from class to class, how they get to lunch, the number of students in any given space at any given time, working continuously with their, trying to encourage good decision-making, by our young adults, and balancing that with the need to give correction and direction, around health and safety, as high school has always been. and middle school to that extent too. And so we're continuing to struggle with that. None of us as educators, especially of educators of young adults, like to micromanage, those kinds of decisions for them. But we find ourselves in this unenviable position of actually needing to keep our promise, to follow the health and safety protocols that direct us from the state of Oregon and the health authorities. So, we'll continue to talk about that. We do know that we have lots of kids and families that are as concerned for their safety, as not. And all of those things we learn about and have learned about, understand that we've had 3 days of school with full classrooms and full kids. And we haven't had that for 18 months. And we haven't had it under these conditions. So we really are working to try to learn how to manage this and manage this safely. Try to support the wishes of the board and the community, and as well as keep kids safe and in school. You may or not, you continue to learn. We have kids that aren't in school right now because we've had to use the protocols, that go along with COVID, and almost every school does. So those are some of the things we have to think about, as we make the decisions that we have room for, is how many kids missing school because they need to be quarantined or isolated is the right amount. And those are the things that weigh on us in terms of the decisions we're making all the time. So how many kids is it okay, to have exposed or infected or those types of things on any given day when we do anything, have any particular kind of event that would be okay. And so anyway, those things we lose sleep over most nights as we're getting ready to get through the next day of school with our 300 students at lunch, and working through that season, trying to do that, continue to do that safely and orderly in a way that would guarantee that kids would feel safe and be able to be and stay in school. So our mindsets do matter, and I just want to talk about, as we came in and began to talk about these notions of care and connection, we've really kind of think about what culture, do we want to create, for students as they come back to school. Not quite yet. So we really did want. We knew we had a lot of logistics to take care of, but we really wanted to think about our own personal mindsets, and how we would come to school and how we want children to experience school, and how our teaching and learning is going to create certain experiences for schools. And there are student mindsets that we'd like to encourage and develop, and there are educator mindsets that can support that or actually take us down a different path. So we did have some, we knew we had some logistics to take care of. And you may not be in a funny mood tonight, but different people look at things in different ways. So are you on following the, yeah, okay. Make sure, so I'm seeing this. So we did have some logistics to take care of. Those are some things that are really important in terms of following our health and safety protocols. Go ahead and move the slide. We did have to think about how we're going to work in our classrooms and think about working with children in ways, because they are in a new situation. They've never been in these situations before as well. Try to work with them in ways that feel safe and feels like school. But we also wanted to think about the possibilities that we have now, and for all of us to actually accomplish things that we may or may not have ever thought we could accomplish. And that's how a fantastic year for school. Thinking about our seniors having that year that they've been dreaming about ever since that they've been in school. And we need to be in school, but we also want to know that we can achieve more than maybe we ever thought we could under these conditions, and learn things that we never thought we could learn. So we know that the teacher has the greatest influence. And so thinking about how we work with our teachers to create those experiences for children that would cause them to develop the mindsets that we might wish for them. And then what are the mindsets of the teachers, that would actually encourage that. So we're making the case that a child's belief in themselves and what they can do is the greatest predictor of how they're going to do. But we know that a child's belief in themselves is the greatest predictor of what they're going to be able to do. So we've asked ourselves, how do we create experiences in school that would cause children to believe in themselves as learners and what they're capable of? And I know a couple of people here, but oops, don't go quite yet. But these are some of the people that were, that we actually study and actually kind of help us determine that. And some of these are longtime understood, social psychologists, and some of them are people who are studying classrooms. John Hattie, who studies classrooms and looks at studies of schools over time. And again, the greatest predictor of performance is a child's belief in themselves. So how do we create conditions, schools, and classrooms and cultures that cause that to happen? Okay, thanks. Most of us have become familiar with Carol Gluck's work and notions of growth mindset, and that notion of that opportunity to grow, and what conditions cause a person to take the kinds of risks with new things that would cause them to actually be able to learn new things, develop new competencies, and eventually learn that, oh, golly, if I practice something for a while, even though I didn't do it very well at first, I can actually learn how to do that, develop a competency. So it's not so bad to get started and get better. Versus those mindsets where people are afraid to try anything because it's not safe, they're going to get embarrassed, they're going to feel like their weaknesses are revealed. They're not going to feel safe trying something new. And we probably all experienced a little bit of that fixed mindset where we didn't want to do something because everybody's looking at us and we're afraid they're going to think we're less than what we are. So we're trying to build in opportunities to develop that safe environment for kids where they can learn and grow and know that they can learn.
Are we also doing that for staff so that we can start planning outside of the box and not be so connected to our past culture, which no longer works in COVID-19?
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talk about this mindset, growth mindset, we say this is for students and for staff. This is really important. So it has to be safe for us though too. It's that safe environment. So we have to start to do some things new. We have to start to make some changes. We have to try some things that we won't be awesome at it, as we first get started. Mm-hmm. So it's really important to recognize those processes, reward those processes of learning and getting started with new things and then getting better. So we all can kind of see that in sports, and the same thing is true for instructional practices and those ways that we work with kids as well. So thanks for that question. So if it's not safe, you might not show up, or they might not show up. Sorry, I was a biologist. I was a biology teacher, so the far side, was sort of part of my curriculum. I had to use those periodically. I was sharing with Ginger though too. Some of these things, in presentation, are ways to approach different kinds of audiences. Some people appreciate a visual, some a quote, some a joke, and those kinds of things. So, actually trying to show different ways of sharing and knowing.
I appreciate the far side that I'm on and on Facebook. It gives me I'll like multiple times.
So the notion of academic mindsets then is one that we actually take a little bit deeper, and we're kind of looking at how to work with adolescents and develop these academic mindsets. I want to share, these are these academic mindsets that come out of some particular work from the University of Chicago. They're the people who are working with the ninth grade success, ninth grade on track. All of those freshman success systems came out of University of Chicago. And this is some of the studies that they're looking at. That we notice that when students feel like they belong to this academic community, when they believe in themselves, and that they can succeed, when they believe that they can get better with practice, and when they believe that the work has relevance for them, then, again, we sort of call that, the belief in themselves. But what we know, go ahead and go to the next slide. What we know is when students feel that way, when they have those beliefs, then they exhibit lots of behaviors that we would say those are good students. They come to school, they do their homework, they engage in class, they talk a lot, they're willing to take risks, they try new things, they work with others well. When kids aren't believing in themselves as learners, they have a tendency to exhibit other behaviors. And I'm just kind of sharing one of the things that we're trying to think about as we shift is that a lot of times we try to focus on those behaviors. Attendance and, being on task and turning in homework and things like that. We're trying to encourage, let's not over focus, on those behaviors without taking care of creating the culture to develop the academic mindset. We've got to figure out how to help kids have school experiences that cause them to develop the competence that help them feel like they can do it.
And is this where our clear expectations for students lies in?
That's one part of it, yes.
Because I know that we're really struggling right now, and we're trying to get that all together.
And are you talking about the clear expectation in terms of the standards and the learning targets?
Yeah,
and those types of things?
the diversity amongst the classrooms of, is late work accepted, is late work not accepted? Different grading criteria, like clear expectations for the students to be able to have. Because that would feed into the mindset.
That would be part of that, absolutely. One of the things we know is that it should be really clear to the students what it is that it looks like, when they're proficient at the standard. So they have a clear picture of that as well as a teacher. So again, go to the next slide. Going back to, again, some of the others that help support some of that research is going back to our psychology. That when kids believe a particular way about themselves as learners, they exhibit certain behaviors and even, are more resilient and respond to stress a little bit better in those situations. So again, we keep asking, how do we create those conditions, so that we can develop those beliefs about themselves as learners. Some of this is connected, to some of the equity work that we're doing and thinking about diverse learners in diverse classrooms. Soretta Hammond is a person who looks at culturally responsive classrooms. And her way of talking about that is being able to shift mindsets. She actually uses the same research in her work. She talks about moving learners from being dependent, to independent. So how do we move students from kind of being dependent on the teacher or, some other adult to know what next move to make, to actually being independent and being able to start to direct their own learning and know how to learn and approaches to learning that help them succeed. We know kids and that, oops, go back just one. Go back one, thanks. We also know a lot about the brain and when kids are feeling under threat, we've heard about, about some of those things, definitely give us some things to think about as we do our work and examples of maybe when kids felt a little under threat. Even though 43 years, I try not to, I never thought kids would be scared of me, but it gave me a little different picture of that today, you know what I mean, in terms of how students might experience the principal's office versus some support. So those are things we have to think about because we know that when under threat, that the brain kind of shuts down. And that can happen for a lot of reasons at school. So those are things that we're paying attention to, the brain work behind that. So all that to say, we want to make sure, we can move that next slide, that we're working on the right things. And there are lots of, stay there for just a second. There are lots of opportunities to work really hard. And work really hard, and work really hard, and have lots of activity, and maybe not get the results that we thought we would get. And that's just frustrating to us when we work so darn hard, and we don't get the results we expect to get from our hard work. We're trying to really, kind of unpack that notion of what is the right work, what are the right things to be working on, given the limitless number of things we could be doing. I've shared with you in some of the background materials. I've put a little folder for you today, so you can look beyond a summary here. Another thing that we're thinking about, especially with this role, is that there's a notion of improving instruction and evaluations are actually kind of different animals. And so evaluation is more involved with making some judgments and some ratings and some things like that. And it's really hard, especially in our school environments, to try new things, and fail forward and those kinds of things when you're being evaluated, and you think that evaluation is going to be connected to that. So we want to develop some systems that separate improvement, from evaluation. So we're looking at these 5 dimensions of teaching and learning, which gives some nice frameworks for the kinds of things that we might expect to look for across our classrooms, across our curricula, and to be able to work in our professional learning communities around in creating some common language, some common types of things to look for that we know are really best practices in schools and in classrooms and curriculum and assessment development as well. So I've shared with you because that's a framework. It kind of gives a nice picture of the kinds of things that over time we can work with and improvement processes. We can find areas of focus within those frameworks. We can visit each other's classrooms. We can learn how to give each other effective feedback on those things. But when we have some common frameworks that we're working from, and we start to know what really good instruction looks like from one content area to another, then we can really start to move forward as a professional learning community. And you have this in your practice, but this is just an example of a framework. I shared this one because we're working on purpose and engagement, as kind of our introduction to this, working really hard on those sorts of areas. Is it really clear, what the learning targets are and the teaching points, and are kids really clear about what it is they're learning and what it looks like when they're doing it well? And then are we using effective strategies to engage students, the ones that would build the competence and confidence in them, as learners, that would start to help them believe in themselves. You got to learn how to do something to get that confidence, right? You can't, if somebody does it for you, you know that you can't do it. You keep depending on others. So we're really trying to develop competence so that we can learn that we can do that if we practice that. And again, our mindsets matter. We keep working on this, and it's going to take us some time, but we want to build that culture of educator mindsets that support those really positive academic mindsets for children. And finally, if we pull this off, we'll give a little fist pump at least. You guys are, I know you're smiling and chuckling behind your masks, at the far side comment. But thanks for letting us spend a little time just to talk through that and think through that, and it might have been longer than you might have liked this evening. But
No, I appreciate the work you do behind the scenes. And, you know, don't feel bad, I can be intimidating too. So I do wanna follow up with, you know, I hope that as you go forward and you're looking at mindset growth. I do believe in mindset growth, but I believe there's that secondary component of having clear expectations of what success looks like for each student. And if you don't know what you're shooting for, then you can't really decide if you've been successful or if you failed and how to get there. So I don't want that lost in our focus.
Absolutely. Appreciate that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
You guys are quiet today. Come on.
They're afraid I might keep talking. and then they're gonna-
I'll have questions after.
Would this be a good time to talk about the item that you got?
Probably.
I appreciate being asked to provide information. I do not have the complete set of information, so I feel like I would not be able to address this. The information was new to me. I know pieces and bits, but I do not have the full picture, and I feel like the board deserves, and the community deserves the full picture. So I'm asking that this be tabled until the next meeting. So I have time to do a thorough analysis of how this occurred. And what has occurred and why, and answer the questions that have come up. What is homecoming? I don't know.
Next Friday.
It's in a Saturday.
Well, what was told to the children? Because I haven't even heard that directly from the students.
I've heard bits and pieces, and I don't want to speculate. I know that the decision was not made today, it was made on Friday. But how that all happened, I do not know. So I don't want people to be upset about something that may not be accurate or for the wrong reasons. Yeah. And I need some time to find out.
I'm just gonna be honest. I really feel like the lack of transparency is a huge issue for our district. That the students were notified before parents, before the school board. We don't have a definitive process of when we're canceling activities for COVID. I feel like this was blindsiding a lot of people. I'm really concerned that this is just a continuation of the really unacceptable communication that we experienced last year. And I'm really having a struggle trusting that the right choices are being made. I'm very, very, very disappointed that there wasn't an out-of-the-box solution for this, especially when the commitment was made. If I was a parent, because my son died, I'm not right now, to a high schooler, I would be furious. And I'm very disappointed. Like, on a scale of 1 to 100, 105. And I work at a hospital.
I will get this information as soon as possible and good communication to show.
Thank you.
I think also that, I don't.
I'm sorry, you can't comment.
Yeah, I was gonna say, sorry, this is a meeting, so. Do you have more on your report here?
Well, the last thing is that, and this is kind of cool, that we're going to start the strategic planning process next month. And this particular event might be a good catalyst for some of the conversations that we need to have during that strategic planning process. About transparency, about communication, about time, about engagement, about participation, about out of the box ideas. Those kinds of things. So yeah, that our next work session, our work session in October, we will begin this process. So Jerry Corner will be here and to work with us and do an introduction and let everyone know what's going to be happening in the community over the next 3 years, 1 year at a time, and how we will get participation.
That's it.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
And you probably don't know the answer, but I'm gonna ask it anyways. When do you expect to have communication around this issue, and what do you intend for that to look like? For families, to the board, to all of those, how do you?
Well, I will sit down with the administrative team in the high school, because no one has really explored their thinking and how they can do this decision. I have not asked them to give that to me yet, because they're still pulling it together. Staff members are absent today. We had no subs for 2 absences today, so people were scrambling, trying to cover and make sure that classrooms were served and students, because students were in them. I have to start gathering all the OHA information that I'm required to have by law, and meeting with people that are getting exemptions if I need, setting up that documentation and work. I have a very tight timeline for that to happen, so that's happening at the same time. So I think it can happen pretty quickly after we sit down and have a conversation. And then I'll work with Jillian about the information, and we'll share it out. So I haven't had, this was all to do this morning as well.
So, I appreciate that this is all very last minute for everybody in this room. I appreciate that. I guess what I'm more to the heart of what I'm asking for is through your work on this moving forward, will it be clear the process
Yes.
for future events?
Yes.
And then we might get some sort of information about what we can expect, you know? How does that information flow intend to happen? If everything goes right, what's our process of communicating things like this?
Yes.
Sure.
I think that the issue, in a normal year, the board would never hear or make a decision about or have anything to do with homecoming. I mean, this is totally school operations. It's nothing that we should be involved in, you know, that's way outside our purview. So I think it's new for everybody, this idea of, you know, and making decisions on the fly. And how does that get communicated? Who does it get communicated to? And I appreciate, you know, we're making mistakes, we're gonna make mistakes. But I just think being really honest and humble and willing to admit those, and nobody, not assign blame so much as just try and have a productive thing going forward. That being said, I think that it would be nice if we could be included in communication ASAP, like, don't put this off till Thursday evening, or, you know, and I really hope that people are thinking outside the box. Dances can be held outside, dances can be, they can look a lot of different ways, you know, and I know the joy of buying a homecoming dress, and anyway, I'm sure that leadership is doing that the best, and it's a good experience for the kids, but
I think so.
it's just a weird time.
In saying that, Heidi, we can't always look for the easy solution. And I feel like that's where we're constantly going. And I wanna see something else.
Explain what you mean by the.
Like canceling, we could have postponed, we could have picked an outside the box solution. It was canceled, the students were notified on the QT and no communication at all. I really feel like transparency is our best piece. I've been pushing for transparency. And I'm really, really still disappointed. And that's just how it's gonna be.
I disagree a little bit with what you said on the communication bit. I mean, as a parent, I did receive an email today. And if I'm correct, there was a portion in there saying we are looking for alternative solutions.
Yeah, it's this Friday.
No, I'm talking right now, so, there is a portion there. We just heard Ginger say that she needs more time to do that as well, and this is all new. And so I would agree with Heidi that, we need to give a little bit of grace here to and room for the system to work. And expect some communication back about it, you know, this as a board, I agree, this isn't our decision. Right?
No,
This is not general
No, no, no.
operating, and I don't think it should be.
It's
And
just
so,
not our purview, it's a
What
building
we're
decision.
really talking about is, do our communication systems work in the district, which I would say is a board. Correct.
And our policies being applied equitably.
Correct,
So when I hear about masks here, but not there,
right.
you know, those are the things that I think I have questions about, not necessarily the actual, you know, we don't need to get into each school's business about how they do things, but we need to make sure things are being done fairly, equitably,
Yes.
not overboard, not underboard, yeah, so.
Right. I agree.
Thank you for that. And I will for quickly as possible. Okay, thank you.
Alrighty, moving on to item number 4, our consent agenda.
Excuse me, there were 2 other agenda items there. And
Yeah.
I did prepare something, I don't know if you have time or.
She has an adoption of the notice. of
Yes, I'm sorry, I forgot. Sorry, sorry.
The number B, it's 3B.
It's
Yes.
online, it's online.
That's why.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is online.
Sorry about that.
It's okay, I was asked to prepare for 2 things. Well, one thing I needed to prepare, and the other one I was asked to prepare, and it's about the virtual online program. So a lot of the conversation tonight has been around the students on site who are back in the buildings, but the virtual online program is a completely remote program. The benefit of this program is that the students are still North Marion School District students, but they are not attending class anywhere on a school campus. So they're in a program that is completely individualized and self-paced. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of the data as to who, at which grade levels are enrolled in the program as we take a look at this. And then give you some numbers as far as demographic groups who are choosing this program, because we've done a lot of work and wondering about this data. It was concerning. And I thought you would want to know that. Do you have the document?
Yes, yep.
Okay, so you can see it's broken out by grade and for each building. And when you take a look, there's only 10 primary school students, but we are covering every single grade level, K through 12, with enrollments in this program. There's a number of students who are our ELL students at every individual school building and grade level. So there is an overrepresentation there.
What does EL monitor mean?